think the mic will work.
The mic on the computer or the mic in the headset?
The mic in the headset.
No, it doesn't, because it's not even plugged in. It has to be the mic on the computer.
Try plugging the orange thing in. I think the mic will work.
It's telling me it's not working. It's telling me it's either muted or it's hardware muted. All right, well, I don't have anybody else in the Hangout right now, so I can't test it. Why would that work if this isn't plugged in?
I don't know, but I think it does.
No, it doesn't. When you're on Hangouts, the laptop monitor laptop mic is your input.
All right. I'm not sure exactly how to do it. I could sit and try to do it, or you could.
Hey, Justin, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Yeah. Wow, that's quite loud. Thank you.
Let me turn my volume down just a little bit here.
No, I'm all the way up. Hang on. Oh, I'm having such an argument with people about reverse racism, and they're driving
Yes, I've
me
been reading
crazy.
it. I've been reading it, and I just can't because I will say something to somebody.
What am I doing wrong? What am I?
They are too white to understand, and they've never been around anybody who isn't, and they don't get it because they live in a fantasy world, or in Mish's case, they're not American. You got to remember that. You got to remember that. And South Africa is so far ahead of us now in terms of that. Because because Mish's whole adult and growing up life experience are in a post-apartheid society after the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. Remember that about her.
Yeah.
So as for your white friends, they're just really white. That's all it is. I mean, you know, I hate to be ugly, but there's some really white people out there. And I don't even know how. I mean, you know, I'm fairly pasty looking, but you got to remember that I have spent all of my life, with the exception of my college years, in the South, and there's stuff that I know because of that people don't know if they. You know, because say what you will about Southerners, you can't escape each other. I mean, you live near each other.
Yeah.
You see each other. The blood, there's a lot of blood, but the blood is sad, but the blood also binds. Whereas if you live in a suburb, one of those white suburbs of Chicago or Detroit, you've never seen a black person. I remember the most shocking thing to me when I, you know, leave in my naive young selfness, leave East Tennessee and go off to Minnesota to college, and I get to the little town of Northfield, Minnesota, which is a wonderful little town, and I was like, oh my God, there are a lot of white people. Oh my God, what is wrong with this? I had to go to Minneapolis.
Where am I now? There's very monochromatic
I know.
place where I live right now.
It's the same kind of experience, and of course that wasn't your experience at all growing up.
No.
And I think that it's, you know, it's just really, that was the other thing that struck me too when, you know, living in the time that I spent in Minnesota, you know, you'd go to Minneapolis, and in downtown, you know, in Minneapolis and in St. Paul, it looked like America to me. I mean, there were white people and black people and Asian people and everybody. But then I had friends who lived in, you know, in these white suburbs, and they were white suburbs, and oh my God, they were white. And I was like, you know, 10 miles from here, there are all the kinds of people that they're supposed to be. Why are they not here? I mean, I understand residential, you know, like neighborhood level segregation, but in a city, you know, there should be people. And it was so weird. I did not, because you don't have that in a medium-sized southern city. You might have residential segregation, but you see each other.
Yeah.
And in a small town, you know, you may have residential segregation, but you can't avoid each other because the white side of town and the black side of town are separated by a street.
Mm-hmm.
or some railroad tracks or something, Whereas there are no black people. I mean, I know there are black people in Maine, but there aren't many. And if people just haven't had the experience, there are people who sincerely believe that America was a post-racial country, and that it's gone backwards and become racialized because of those bad people. And I don't know what to do with those people because it's not true. But they don't understand that it's not true.
You know what it's like? The problem is always this way. When the right answer is more complicated than the wrong answer, the right answer wins. Abortion is murder is the absolute prototypical example of that. And of course, it's just as wrong for black people to hate white people as it is for white people to hate black people. How could you put it any other way? This is balanced. It's even. The right answer is not something I'm able to articulate, obviously.
No, because it's not. Because it's not articulable.
Yeah.
In the way that it's not easily articulated. That's the problem. Is that there are a lot of things that just aren't easily articulated in the world.
I don't know how to do it, and it's the wrong thing for me to talk about. I thought that was going to be a kind of a
how did they get on reverse racism from
that's what Straight Pride Day is kind of the same thing. Why can't I have a Straight Pride Day if you can have
White History?
A Gay Pride Day? It's sort of blended into that, and I didn't think that it was going to really go anywhere, but we got into it, and then this guy, who I don't know where I knew him from, just completely blocked me after that. But I know that I know that I have failed to articulate it. It's really not. It's something I feel very emotional about, but because it's such a deep part of me, I can't really. I can't really express it. Can you express what it's like to believe in God? I can't express this. It's too much of a.
No, I understand completely. I mean, I do because it's so deep and so fundamental. And if people haven't had the experience, I think what I typically say in those cases is.
Leave you a message with that number. Okay. Okay. Thanks, Stephen.
Who's that?
Steve Littlefield.
Oh, okay. Sorry, go on.
Oh, sorry. Do you have any friends who are black who are close enough friends to tell you the truth?
Mm-hmm.
And then I say, go talk to them and get back to me.
Right.
And I hate to do that, but
that's sort of what I did.
You know. But I mean, the sad thing is that there are many people for whom the answer is no, they don't. I really did actually. Almost murder one of my former students through not actually murder them, but I felt like it. If I could have reached through Facebook land and grabbed this child, who very seriously dated a black guy for quite a while, and was slathering this nightmarish, horrible Fox News crap, during one of the things, I don't know if it was Ferguson or sometime like that, and I was like. And it's still on good terms with her ex-boyfriend, and I was like, why don't you, I almost sent her, I resisted sending her a message, because I know that she needs to talk, and I resisted sending her a message and saying, would you run this by Wayne? And see what he says?
It's funny, because on the way to picking up, the only time I listened to Amy Goodman, do you know Democracy Now?
Yeah.
Is when I'm in the car and I was picking Francie up and I got Amy Goodman's report on Baltimore, and it was great. I would download it and listen to it. She had great coverage. She had Jesse Jackson and a few other people talking about what actually happened and all the stuff about the governor saying these were just thugs. And Jesse Jackson's talking about subprime. Predatory lenders, and somebody else is talking about how many all the jobs are overseas. So basically, they're giving the context for the urban situation right now in cities like Baltimore.
Yep.
Which I just when I'm reading my boards, the ABC boards, all I can read about is black people are giving themselves bad PR by doing this, and Very Neanderthal.
Yeah,
Anyway.
I just can't. I can't even. I cannot watch any of that coverage
Yeah.
from either side of the spectrum
Yeah.
because I know what's really, partly because I have friends in Baltimore who I know, what's really going on from them, and a lot of friends in DC who I know what's, pretty much what's really going on from them. And then also, seeing who was there, and it's not like you don't know what's actually being discussed. But what you don't know necessarily is what's the is so what then? So so how do you change the conversation? And the answer is you don't change the conversation on a grandiose and a grand national scale. The only way you can change the conversation is on a micro scale, is on a diverse community of people who you bring them together and they discover that they're like each other in significant ways and different from each other in significant ways, and that they like each other despite their differences, and that's how you make change.
Well, to some degree, yes, but how do you make change without getting... Folks, we're going to start talking about Catalyst any second now.
Yes.
We're waiting for some people who don't already pretty much understand what we're doing to come. But what is Catalyst progress? Okay, let's get to it. Let me just finish the sentence, which by this time I've completely forgotten how it was going to end. So, See, when that happens to me at school board meetings, it's embarrassing. I had wanted to.
You can use. You can use. There's a Keep, Google Keep. I use all the time when I have to just write something like, "This is important."
Right. Unfortunately, I can't think about that on the fly when I'm publicly speaking in front. Never mind. It's an aging problem, but I guess we should get started because we are recording this. So if people wanted to know about it who aren't here, they could listen to the recording, and maybe we should edit out the Racism in America introduction. But gosh, I really was hoping for a couple more people.
There may yet be a few more.
Yeah, I emailed, messaged some people to remind them, because we've had such a bad track record lately of having people actually remember to show up to a hangout. I was hoping John Malley would be here. So, what is the JM, Dick, in your post? Are you talking about John? JM. Right. Yeah, I want him. He said he'd be here, so. Well, we could just. What do you think, Brendan? Should we hang out and wait, or get started?
We can get started. I'm asking a couple of people if they want to join.
Oh, okay. Okay. Well, the first question that we sort of grapple with is, what are we? What is the Catalyst Learning Network? And I think we've gotten it narrowed down to 5 things, and not equal in the amount of work that goes into it, but they're all important parts of what Catalyst is. The first thing is a support. I also want to say, jump in and ask questions and comments while I'm talking. Don't wait. Don't wait to ask questions till the end. Just jump in with any questions that you have, either in the chat or vocally. The first thing is a support network for students who are still in school. And that's probably the most important part of what we are actually currently doing to support students. We are very present on school survival, and we have a group of kids who we're actively working with to to help them, to support them in their current lives at school, and to try to counsel them through the process of maybe even leaving school. And Brendan also just adds, you can add stuff as I go too.
Okay.
The second thing is that we'd like to be is a facilitation and mediation program for families, to provide lay counseling to kids, and also possibly to their families, mediation between the troubles that in the families that stem from school. We'd also like to eventually have a screened list of professional counselors and therapists who understand how and why kids hate school, and what to sort of, how to regard that problem, as opposed to fixing a child so they, is more happy at school, to be more respectful of kids who really don't like to be at school. One thing that I look forward to the most is when Catalyst starts being a network of teen self-directed learners. That's when we actually have a bunch of people who are doing their learning independently and together, providing mutual support and collaboration. Learning things together, learning things separately and talking about them together, reading books together, and talking about issues of great interest, and working on research projects collaboratively. I'm really kind of looking forward to the time when we can have a couple of the kids we were working with work on public education projects together that is about, the history of school reform, because I think that I'm hoping that Catalyst students will be really into the whole issue of helping to change education. Which is really the same thing as the next bullet that I'm seeing, a homeschooling / self-directed learning program for teens, helping kids understand their own interests and needs, fix on short and long-term goals, and working with families, working on helping them manage the logistics of their self-directed learning, and supporting people who are sort of in a betwixt and between category. They're out of school, either they've dropped out or they've graduated. They're not in college, and they're not working on a career that really interests them. They're in that very young, directionless phase. Maybe they're living with their parents, and maybe there's lots of conflicts there. But there is a category that we're very interested in getting involved with, is these kids who are sort of in between. And then Catalyst would like to be a vehicle for education change activism. We would like to bring out student voice, obviously, in the efforts to change education. So those are 5 of the ways we're defining what Catalyst is.
Right, exactly. And the category of those who are out of school but aren't really on track, according to whatever criteria, also includes people who are homeschooling, but they're just they've been pulled out of school, but there isn't really a plan or a focus, and they're not doing unschooling in the traditional way, like in a planned, intentional way. They're just like, school isn't working, but what do we do instead? Which I think is, along with people who have dropped out or who have graduated or quit college and all of that, there are like a lot of people in those situations, and that's often just not addressed. I mean, there's the idea that quitting school is going to lead to problems, but then we're saying you can quit school and things can go very well if you have support and know what you're doing and so on. But there are a lot of people who haven't connected with that, so that's something to work on.
Right. some of the things that we have accomplished, the number one thing has been our website. I don't know if people have taken a look at the website, but I'm pretty happy with it. I think we decided to go with this template. Let me call it up on my computer here. Which gave it a very polished look that we might not have had the time to really produce if we had gone with more of a homemade. Can I turn this into a reading my screen?
Yeah, you can use share screen.
Yeah, you just click on the share screen, the screen share button, the green thing over on the left.
Hang on.
Between the chat and
Right.
Right.
All right. So, does anybody that has looked at the website have any questions about it? While I figure this out.
I can share if you would like.
Wait a minute.
Yeah, well, if in the interest of time,
Yeah.
does that toolbar not show up on the left side of your screen?
No, it is. I'm just having trouble getting it to show me the screen that I want to highlight.
The best way to do it
there
is
it
to
is. No, that's not it. Sorry.
If you do the screen share first and then pick the thing, it's going to be a lot easier.
Oh.
I've discovered this. Just turn on screen share
Okay.
first, and then click on the window that you want.
Okay.
Because otherwise you will
Got
drive
it.
yourself crazy.
Yeah. No, that's.
But also make sure that
And
There we go. On
there
the
we
way.
go. Is that
Nope.
no?
still nothing.
Yeah, Brendan, if you understand it, then why don't you do it?
I don't
Yes,
know why this is so
now,
difficult for you to
wait,
submit.
wait.
Oh yeah, I do. Because
Ah!
and what browser?
it may not be in its own window. That's one thing. If it's in
Yeah.
a tab, you're not
If it's
going
in
to
a
see
tab, that is a problem.
Yeah, well, so I put it into its own window, but oh no, I didn't. I put the wrong thing in its own.
There you
All
go.
right. Now, and there we go. All right.
There we go. Yes. There you are.
All right.
Yay. Yeah,
So,
it's a little window.
Yes.
It's always such an issue for me.
so as we scroll down, we have it's not a school, it's a network. And one thing I'm interested in knowing is that does that work as a tagline right under the self-directed learning for teens? What is Catalyst? This is sort of the first thing that people will ask when they hit the site, so I want to be very clear at the very top. The Catalyst is a community where students can pursue their interests, develop their goals, receive support wherever they live, and while enrolled in school or while homeschooling. Available to any teenager who wants to pursue learning outside of the standardized environment of school. We have these 5 purposes. So when I want to answer what is Catalyst to the person who's glancing at the website, I want to try to be clear, but it's been a kind of a difficult job. So wondering if anybody has any feedback there. Yes, that is Harry Potter. Everything that was in this, the collage that I created there has a meaning and a sort of a purpose.
Sorry.
Cool.
That is to represent that if you have, a computer, internet connection, you can pretty much talk to anybody if you can get them to talk to you. And we hear about author chats, and we hear about all kinds of things that can happen when you have Skype or Hangouts. A cooking show, you can lead your own cooking show. You can. This is a little drama group here, painting. I mean, this is everything that I put here. sort of is connected to, here's a hangout, there's another hangout, and over here there's another hangout, and at the end of Daniel Radcliffe there, he's on a hangout. So I wanted to sort of show all the different possibilities.
Right, and those are things that we could update with as we do more things and have our own
Right.
screenshots and examples.
Right, because
Cool.
these are just captured. So what is Catalyst? We tried to describe it as simply as we could, considering that it is more than one thing. So we love some feedback on how successful we are there. The Catalyst messages connect to Google Docs. We're hoping that some of these things will be helpful to people who are undergoing difficulties. You're unhappy in school. You're having a hard time with your parents. You want to go to college and you feel like this is the only way. About Catalyst, how to join, which is everything but like a membership application, which we haven't developed yet, and how can you support Catalyst. That's the next section. Featured events this week, something we just got started because we really are trying to do multiple events. Videos, we're hoping to, before too long, have our own, in addition to these, which we like a lot. Produce some videos, maybe off of Hangouts and maybe podcasts and stuff like that. But these put it in context. Join the network. This is for people who just want to help, who want to be mentors, who can tutor, who can counsel, who can do anything. The reason this might work is because Brendan and I have pretty extensive networks, so we want to be able to call upon people for help, and so this makes it official. You are one of our people that we go to, who we are, and connect, and the calendar of public events, which is something that we're trying to keep changing and keep up with every week. The Catalyst Interest Survey is the same thing as the School Survival Survey. Brendan, is there any difference between the two?
Yeah, I mean it's a little bit shorter and it's more focused on not so much how much you hate school and what do you think about school survival, which is on
Right.
the other survey, but
Right.
it has a lot of parallels. I mean, like, what are your interests? What are you thinking about the future? Things like that.
Not a lot of returns on that one, but we do get a lot. We have gotten about a little over 600 survey returns since last August on the School Survival Survey. And when we email everybody who sends in a survey who leaves us their email address. So we try to keep up with that. And that's it for the site. Any thoughts? Let me just read some of your comments.
Looks good to me.
How about? I'm sorry. What?
Oh, I was just saying it's really beautiful. I love the template, and I think that was a really good idea on your part to go with that rather than to try to
Right. Yeah.
to
Yeah. No, I think the sub pages are all Google Docs, which is not ideal. But
well,
right
they
now,
currently are all Google Docs. I think that one of the things that I would wish that you guys would stop saying, and you inevitably say it every time you share the site with people, is you talk about how it's not finished. Well, no website is ever finished.
no, I don't know. I feel like it's finished. I feel like I want to know if the message works.
Yeah,
I
mean,
want
that's
to
the
know if
thing.
things are.
That's the thing, but for quite a while, you guys were all talking about how it's not finished, it's not finished, it's draft, it's it's whatever, and I don't think that's good language to use,
Mhm.
because as as Sapphire has just said, websites by their very nature are never finished.
They're like paintings and poems.
They are they're like anything else worthwhile, have you finished perfecting your recipe for your favorite thing that you make? No, I mean, you make it basically
Right.
the same way, but
Right.
you make a little change here, or you don't have enough butter, so you substitute. It's the same kind of thing with the website. It will never be finished, so just remove that word from your vocabulary, and then
Mhm.
if there's stuff that needs to be changed, fine, change it. If
Right.
there's stuff
Right.
that's working well, keep it. It won't always work well, and eventually it'll need to be changed again. I think that's the only thing that I would say about just sort of the language you guys have been
Yeah.
using around the site. I think that it does send the message. Here are these 5 things that we do.
Yeah.
I think that's really important that it does that. It allows people a way to get involved, but doesn't compel them to do so. I like that.
Mhm.
Really, at this point, probably the main thing is to share it widely, and just sort of step back, and and then if there's stuff that people don't understand, then you add a thing that explains that.
So, going about spreading this widely is another issue, and I guess we'll get to the issue of promotion of ourselves in a little bit, but of course, promoting your website is something that's easily said and not as easily accomplished. But the next thing I wanted to, on the summary of our progress so far beyond the website, is the surveys. I've talked a little bit about the surveys. They continue to come in. My Twitter obsession has yielded a few survey returns, and I contact everybody who sends us a survey and invite them to chat and give them all kinds of resources. Very rarely do they follow up, but sometimes we get a really special kid who's just really into what we're doing and talks to us a lot. It's every once in a while the surveys really yield someone who really makes a contribution to what we're doing. I'm thinking of a couple of different people who are unfortunately still in school and really not very happy, but they're really good people to know. Development of the parent proposals. This has been interesting, and I think it's something that we're probably going to get pretty good at. You want to talk about that, Brendan? Like the work that we're doing with Mo and Merck and hopefully Kira?
Yeah, sure. And this gets to Dick's question about how is the timeline going for a September launch, which is there's really the question of how do we get participants. I mean, we're talking to quite a few people, but for those that are still in school, there's the question of how they can convince their parents to really leave school and do an alternative. So that's where these parent proposals come into play, and they're basically Google Docs that a couple of current students are working on that explain what they would do if they quit school, their interests, what they're trying to learn even currently, and basically also cover possible objections that their parents might have or misconceptions about leaving school, like the fact that they could still go to college and all these things.
Right.
That might be a good thing to maybe do a hangout in particular on, like that topic, and invite those who are working on them now to come and discuss and even kind of present what they've done so far.
Right.
And just have it be a progress, discussion of that in particular, because it could, if they were here, they could explain what they're doing and share their docs. And
the interesting thing is that we worked with a couple of the young people who have come to us and had developed drafts of proposals of things that they want to study, things that really interested in, and immediately they wanted to show it to their parents. They were thinking about, I wonder what my dad would think about this. I'm like, slow down, because this thing isn't ready yet. What we need to map out is what you're really going to. They want to take it to their parents right away, and yet they don't. So it's kind of hard for them to develop it because while they're developing it, they're still in school. So it's not an easy document to finish, to work on. We wanted to get it to a point where they can present their parents with a plan for them for beyond school. The next thing is the calendar of events. That's just ongoing, getting our name out there, showing that we're active, that we're doing stuff, and trying to pull new people into them. Right now I have high hopes for the student activism hangout series, where we're going to try and talk about how student voice can influence the education debate, and all kinds of ways that, whether you're still in school or if you're out of school, all different ways that you can help raise awareness among your friends about the problems with education. And the next on the progress so far is the Catalyst Advisory Committee, which we haven't really worked on so far very much. We have a few people who we talk to all the time, and that's our advisory committee.
And I represent that group.
Yeah.
I am
Lisa
that
Nielsen,
group.
no, Lisa Nielsen is also on the group.
Right.
And I also think that another couple of other people have been really helping us, including Sherry Handel, who's been helping us doing some writing and some other stuff. But as I get down to the goals section, I'm going to talk more about the organizational structure. Anything else on the summary of progress, Brendan?
I guess one note on the Hangouts is that is like a big part of what we are doing as Catalyst. Like, what is it in practice? Like, instead of school, is Hangouts is going to be a big part of that. One thing we need to figure out how to do is to get more people coming to those.
Right.
I think doing them as recorded, streamed Hangouts, which we've started doing now recently, will help, because we can pull clips from them and share clips, and also invite people to just watch instead of joining if they don't want.
Yeah, I think it's very important to remember that, for one thing, people are not all familiar with the platform. The platform is not necessarily as intuitive as you would want it to be, as Lisa has reminded us with the screen sharing thing. And another thing is that there are a lot of people who, at least at the beginning, want to be passive consumers rather than active participants. They want to move, when they're ready, to more active participation. But they don't want to be impelled or compelled to participate in a way that they're not ready to do. And I think that it's really vital to have a way that people can just watch, in the same way that, that you've got the website so people can just, go and consume that. The more stuff that you have that people can watch in short form, rather than commit themselves to at 7 o'clock on Tuesday or 7 o'clock on Friday or whatever time, I've got to come participate in that thing. That's kind of scary. But to have 3 minutes of, or 3 to 10 minutes of, closer to 3, of really high quality video that they can watch, they can share with people, and then that'll get them involved. But I don't know that. I think that Hangouts are the platform that are definitely the platform that you guys use for the core, for the members. You got to use it's the best available free platform for that, but it's a terrible way to try to get people who are just sort of on the verge. You can't have somebody who's on the verge, who's on the fence, who's wavering, who's considering, and throw them into a place where they are compelled, or they feel like they're compelled to participate.
Right.
It's like my former colleague who at the former school, who once I was walking past her door and she said, "Now today we're going to have a class discussion," she said, "and you will participate or I will send you to the office." But I'm sure it was a great discussion. I'm sure everybody said something, but it wasn't a great discussion because they felt compelled. And in the same way, you're not going to get a great conversation with people who feel compelled to, but just by the affordances of the platform, they feel like they're compelled, made to go. Sapphire, don't even say the K word in front of Lisa. That's not a good idea.
The what word?
Don't look at the chat right now.
This is something I might have to work out. I have a very hard time reading the chat and paying attention to. I mean, maybe I'm just a really bad multitasker. I start reading the chat, which is interesting, and now I don't know what you guys have been talking about.
All right,
At any rate,
I'll summarize the chat. There's actually some good things to discuss there.
Yeah.
So, Dick asked about like having a list, like a page of learning sites. So that's something that we should have. I mean, that's on the to-do list, is like a list of how you can learn online. A lot of people aren't familiar with what's out there, like Khan Academy, Crash Course,
that's good, yeah.
MOOCs, and so on. So, and then Sapphire suggested partnering with Khan Academy. I mean, I think the best way.
I have Bill Gates against him more than anything else, but go on, yeah.
Khan Academy is totally uninterested in partnering with some itty-bitty, teeny-tiny startup that that they've never heard of, because they don't need to be interested in that. That's the thing. If partnering means throw a link on there and say there's some good videos if you're careful, and if you want like to have explained how to do a math procedure without understanding it necessarily, but you just want to know how to do it, then Khan is great. If if that's your preferred learning mode, then it's wonderful. But partnering in the sense that you're talking about of like an actual partnership, they're not interested in that kind of stuff because they have Gates Foundation money. They don't need a partnership.
Right. There's also just, I mean, I think for partnerships, I mean, we don't necessarily need to partner with sites that just have huge amounts of content. I mean, we can link to them and let people know about them, but I think partnerships are a better fit for people who want to do like live events with us, get on Hangouts, streamed Hangouts, structured Hangouts, and basically develop content with us, which, like, hopefully Boy in a Band, I mean, Blake Bowles might be a good person for that. Like, there are others who could be part of like our events or events that we help coordinate.
Right. So, that was all right. So moving on to ongoing work, we have been wanting very much to develop podcasts, a weekly podcast, and I guess we still want to do that. It's a fair amount of labor and planning goes into a podcast. I'm not sure that's going to be able to do a weekly thing unless we get into a routine of doing it. Definitely newsletters. You see, I always think about the print, not print, but text, and Brendan is the one who thinks in terms of videos and podcasts. I think just send out a newsletter, but he says, well, no, we have to also use other media, so that's something we really want to do and do as a series. And again, to bring in student voice about their circumstance and to talk about various issues and update about what Catalyst is doing, I suppose. Why don't you talk about that, Brendan? That's more your dream child than mine.
So the podcast and content. Yeah, so, I mean, a lot of people watch video or will listen to audio, but not necessarily read much in text form. I mean, we can do all of them, but... Right, so Dick made a point. There are so many great podcasts and lessons online already. I mean, I think one of the biggest things we need to do is introduce people to those things and also introduce them to some of the things that aren't covered in those other types of content.
Mhm.
I think Blake Bull's podcast is really good in terms of summing up some of the alternatives that are being put into place for school and college. And as he puts out more of those, like that's something I would just link to on a list. Like these are all really worth checking out, or these ones are worth checking out for particular people. And there are lots of other content items like that. Or Jonathan Field's Good Life Project interviews are really good. There's lots of content there with all these speakers and authors. I mean, there's just so much really good content out there. But so there's the question of how to introduce people to what those things even are. So our podcast could be kind of meta in that sense and kind of summarize like here's what's new or here's what's out there that you might have missed. But then I also want the podcast and some kind of recurring content in video form to cover the stories and situations of those who are stuck in school or stuck out of school, not really knowing what they're doing, because I don't think there's any content out there that really covers those things in any depth. It definitely doesn't like have interviews with actual people in those situations or cover here's what's happened since last week in this evolving story or anything like that. So that's a big thing I'd like to focus on in the podcast.
Yeah, if we could bring in students who are currently experiencing difficulty in school or who have left school and are now learning with Catalyst, they don't have to be long. They don't have to be longer than 10-15 minutes, possibly, but they will be ongoing stories, which would make them even more interesting.
Right, exactly. And another thing that I don't think is really covered very well in what's out there is interviews with people who are already doing other kinds of alternatives like Sudbury or North Star. I mean, there's some bits and pieces of those types of content and stories out there, but they're not really done with, like, let's get a number of people who are doing alternative education and probably even get them talking with people who are stuck in school and just talk about all kinds of things like that. That's something that I think could be interesting, and there's just not a whole lot of that. So, like, a lot of times, like, one of our challenges is showing people how things can look like instead of school. And usually, like, it's like we're limited to linking to, like, maybe TED Talks or certain podcasts with people who are teachers at these schools or articles, but that's not the same as, like, a video from a person who's doing it. I mean, there's that one TEDx talk that's really popular on hack schooling, but that's, like, a rare example of, like, a well-produced, popular video that actually features people who are doing alternatives. Like, there should be lots of those.
One thing that we talk about a lot, and you'll get into more and more, is talking about bridging the gap, and that you get a lot of information about alternatives, and you get a lot of information about what's going on in schools. Not enough, but it's out there. But bridging the gap between the kids who are really able to learn the way they find most meaningful and the kids who are really suffering in school is not something that people are taking on. Would you say that's right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's kind of the summary of what I'd like to focus on with the podcast, is that gap and discussing it and everything. So the issue of updated content, ongoing updated content, is something that we want to do. What we also need to do, and we try to do on an ongoing basis, is outreach to different groups. And we have made some outreach into the gifted and talented homeschooling community, which Justin brought us into. And there is a possibility that, if kids who have been homeschooled all of their educational life, suddenly they're teenagers and they want to, they don't want to particularly go to school, but they want a little bit more independence. And I think that those kids are really a good fit for Catalyst, so outreach to that community would be great. Also, Steve Hargadon, who does the Future of Education broadcasts, has expressed interest in doing some sort of summit on self-directed learning. And Brendan and I would very much like to, and this keeps getting put on the back shelf, but we would like to develop something that has to do with bridging the gap between alternative education ideas and kids who are currently in school and don't have access to those ideas.
So it's still kind of cooking. You want to talk about that too?
Yeah.
I could hear your voice start to go, so I don't know if I should throw things over to you anymore because I know that you're coming down with a cold.
Yeah, so that's some kind of online summit that could be organized with Steve Hargadon and some other people could be really effective, I think. And again, that theme of bridging the gap between the alternatives that are out there, what people are doing, how they're enjoying themselves with, learning on their own or learning as part of some non-school option, versus those who are either stuck in school or they've quit school and they're just kind of like in the stereotypical thing of you quit school and you don't know what you're doing and you're not really going anywhere in particular, which does happen. I mean, a lot of people who drop out are in that situation, but that's where we're saying you can apply these alternative education ideas and change those situations from the stereotype to what's possible.
Why don't you
I
talk
guess
about the Dave Brown connection?
Right.
Talk about
Yeah.
that?
So that's kind of what I was thinking of. So there's the question of how to find people and propose how they might participate in something like this. And so, on a related note, with Dave Brown, Boy in a Band, he's been getting into this education stuff, but that's not. I mean, it's a priority of his, but he's kind of new to it, and he's also maintaining this YouTube channel, making music videos and other videos, and he's really busy and so on. But it's interesting to see how many people have been giving him feedback and commenting and trying to get in touch with him about alternative education and so on. And so I think that I've been proposing in comments, and I contacted him about this too. We could do some kind of recurrent streamed hangout series where we talk about education, and it could kind of be similar to the podcast but just done as hangouts, but bring on guests and talk about basically changing education and this gap between being stuck in school and alternatives. And the summit could be sort of like a version of that. It's more carefully planned, but I think it doesn't just need to be one summit. Like having some kind of ongoing series would be good, at least monthly or something.
It's a potentially fruitful area because he has just got such a huge network of kids who really love him, and if he wants to focus attention on education, we would love to be there and help. Counseling current students is, I mentioned that is part of our ongoing work. Where the taking care of school survival is very time consuming, and I know there are we pay attention to the text chat, Brendan more than I, and if you happen to be online when somebody's having a crisis, we're really glad that we're there to sort of sort through the problems, but being there in the chat all the time is very taxing. We feel like, at least I know from Brendan, feels like he really has to be there, just because there are crises that come up, but it's hard. It goes late into the night, and it's something that we really want to do and need to do, but it takes a lot of time and takes a lot of, I don't know, why don't you talk about that a little bit, about keeping up with the chat and doing student counseling?
Right. So, I mean, I think it would help to get more sort of mentor types, counselor types who can basically join and talk to people, listen, give input, and so on. Because it does take time, and I think the chat would be better if there were more people more of the time, and even like a variety of people who were in there talking to those in there, not just during crises, but just overall, like when they're sitting there and saying I'm bored and stuff like that. But then at the same time, there's this whole thing of it's very hard to get new people to come into the chat, and even though there are a number of people who frequent it, like in terms of the total number of people who hate school or who are suffering in it or who have filled out the survey, very few have even joined once. And a lot of times when people join once, they say, oh, this is cool, but then they don't come back or whatever. So that's something to figure out. And I think also video could be useful for that, to kind of show this is what a support chat can look like. And I mean, but that gets into another problem or complication in terms of like monitoring it or being there to moderate. Is like there are times when things kind of devolve into like just what happens when some kinds of young people are interacting without supervision or any type of focus, and I mean it can clash with what really like you'd want to show people the first time coming into a chat.
Mm-hmm.
So that's another thing though, where it's like we could make a separate chat that's just for Catalyst, but then we have to sort of persuade people to be in there as well.
Right.
We could do that. I mean, if we got more people coming in, that would help. But I think we have to show people.
I don't really see. I see the school survival chat as a recruitment. An excellent recruitment zone, and it's also a wonderful. I mean, it's a service. It's a. If we were in a religious context, I would say it's a ministry. It's a calling for you guys. It is, though. I mean, it's a thing. It is a thing that you guys are doing, but it's not. I don't really see it as a thing that you'd want to record or that you'd want to have. I mean, I think that as you get people involved, then you transition them over to something else, and that's the place where you do the recording or the transcribing or the whatever. Because school survival, by its very nature, is a place where kids go when they're really frustrated. They're frustrated enough to start looking for alternatives, but they don't know what the alternatives are. That is a very different place and a very different purpose than okay, we found an alternative. It's called Catalyst Learning Network. I absolutely detest the politics and the theology of Rick Warren. I detest that man, politically and in every other way. But if you were to read his book, not the one that everybody buys, the other one that's called The Purpose-Driven Church, don't read it from a religious perspective, but read it from a management and organizational development perspective. The man is a freaking genius. And he talks about, he has these 5 C's, and the outermost one is the crowd, and then comes some other things, and the committed, and the whatever. And I don't have a copy of the book, but I read it probably 10 or 15 years ago. And I was so impressed with the fact that even though I disagreed with almost, not everything that he said, but, 72% of what he said, because I'm not a Southern Baptist, and, I'm not trying to build a church for people who are, who've never been in one in Southern California that's doing a hardcore Southern Baptist line, because that's just the opposite of me. But when you look at what he was doing with that community is not dissimilar to what you guys are doing with yours. And there's a lot to be learned from the different types. They have totally different. I mean, they have obviously got services that are open to everybody, but they have but they've got different ones that are aimed at different groups. And once they've got you into the crowd, then the purpose of that gathering is to get you into the next level. And then if you're interested in going to the next level, then there's a whole different process that you go through to get to the next level. And I mean, obviously, they've got 50,000 people going to their Sunday services or something at multiple locations. That's not, that's not what necessarily you're looking for. But the idea, the way that he developed this organization is just absolutely fascinating. And I think that because it's so different, the context is so different from what you guys are doing, that it will probably be easier for you to see how to make something like that But it seems to me this the school survival thing is within in his language is the crowd. Out of that crowd, you're not going to get everybody to go to the next level, and that's okay. Of course, Warren's perspective is that it's obviously that God is doing all the moving anyway, but that that you're still doing your part, and then he will say, okay, so then given that you've got people coming to this mass giant thing with multiple thousand people, then how do I get them, and what is the next step for them, and then what kind of a structure is appropriate for them. So you got all these people hanging out on the school survival chat. Some of them are interested in going to a next level. Those are the ones that you target with whatever it is. But that's a different, it's a subgroup, and it has different needs. And identifying what the levels are, what the different needs are, is probably a thing that's really going to help with your efforts.
It's interesting. There's an awful lot of, there are a few different levels of participation on school survival. There is the top level, and then there's the next level, and then there's the people who you don't see very often. And all of these people are in not only different levels of participation, but in different stages of their relationship with school and with their parents and how they're negotiating between the two. Some of them are out of school. Some of them are really, really stuck in school. It's all over the place. So the most important thing, I think, right now is for us to figure out how to get what to do with the people who bounce onto the page and bounce off again on the front page of School Survival. They don't come into the chat.
Right. So
because that's a huge resource of it right there.
Right. So the crowd concept in that sort of model, or audience, you could call it, like people who are lurking or participating on a minimal level, but there are a lot of them. I would define that more as like people who are visiting the site and forums, people on Twitter that Lisa's engaging with, people on Voices of School Survival that we're reaching, and that's actually a pretty promising thing where there really are 10,000.
Yeah, I didn't put that down on our outline here, but we should mention that Voices of School Survival has been a pretty successful. Well, probably because of the investment that you put into it early on. They got us a couple of thousand likes on that.
Right. I mean, that's one thing where advertising really was effective, is getting likes.
Right.
that has turned into like a following, and some people then filtering into actually talking to us.
Right.
And likewise with School Survival, really like a very small fraction of people ever join the chat. And so the ones who are there are a mix of people in terms of like commitment to doing catalyst level or type of learning and change and so on. But I would say the crowd is like a beyond the chat. The chat is a pretty specific, focused number of people.
Right.
But then part of what I was getting at is, there's the School Survival chat, but I think there's a lot of like power, benefits to having basically an ongoing chat. Like Catalyst could have its own chat that really is more focused on our purposes and has more strict rules and so on about.
But the thing, the thing is that many people will come to the, I don't know what we'll call it, what chat will be it. I think on the IRC chat, which I know because many people are there sometimes don't. Sometimes they're on the forums talking about something. I don't know, is it going to be a good idea? I don't know really, because chats kind of outdated maybe. I don't know how everybody's communicating nowadays, because technology goes to new things in technology. There are Skypes, even Viber.
Right. Well, there are all kinds of platforms, and people are on all kinds of platforms. Like, they have different preferences. Some people are on Twitter and prefer that, or Facebook. But I think that IRC chat does have a lot of benefits if people learn about it. I wouldn't call it outdated. We could do things like events. Like Creative Live actually uses IRC for their workshops. that are like these multi-day live streamed workshops, and then along with the video and studio-based workshop, they have basically IRC channels. I mean, they are IRC channels with usually a few hundred people that come for the couple days of the broadcasts for a given topic, and it works quite well. And that's something I think we could model. But then the key is to have sort of more active interaction from people who are providing something interesting, as opposed to just a space where people are idling primarily.
And again, I don't see that as a prime. That's not a recruitment tool. That is once you've got people who are involved in some degree, then you bring them over to your IRC channel. That's not a place that you're going to get new people at the beginning any more than you're going to get new people in Hangouts.
I don't know. I mean, I think it can be one way to get new people.
Well, it's a way that as soon as they've joined you, yeah, you want them to participate, but it's not a way that you're going to have people stumble upon it. It's not a way that people, when they're first exploring you, that's not what they're going to do. In the same way that, when people go to the School Survival site, the first thing they do is not hop on the chat, right? The first thing they do is look at the resources that are there. And then they may never come back. Some of them come back, and then eventually they decide they're going to check out this chat thing. But I think also that it's very important to remember, especially going forward in time, your target audience are roughly around between the ages of my two kids. Now, Clara, who's about to be 18, has never done IRC chat, but she would be perfectly, she would if she found something really interesting. Theodore's a gamer. He would, he does, because there's stuff that he does. But if you run into people who are in that range who are not gamers, I don't know if you will, but if you run into them, you got a lot of people who really, they use all kinds of technology, but they don't use it necessarily with the kind of deliberate understanding that us old people do who remember the before times. They just want it to work, they want it to look familiar, and they want it to work. And sometimes when it doesn't work, they freak out. I even find that with Mr. Gamerboy, who wants to build his own system in either this summer or next. The least little thing will send him, Dad, can you help me find such and so? And it was, can you help me reallocate a dedicated videogram on this thing? And I was like, yeah, I can do that. But it turned out that what we really had to do, what would end up being much easier, was there was a software setting that had turned itself on because Windows 8, and it just needed to be turned off, and then we didn't have to reallocate videoram at all, which was fine with me. The point of my long story being, there are a lot of kids out there who are much less tech savvy than Theodore, who are going to be coming to you because they hate school or whatever. They found it. They Googled "I hate school," and School Survival came up. They don't know how to do some of this stuff, and IRC chat is not friendly to newbies. It is not friendly because of the culture of the existing group, who do not exactly want newcomers unless they're like them. It's the same issue. It's the exact issue that Rick Warren faced, ironically, in when he felt God move him to move to California and start this church, and he thought, can I not just go and pastor an existing church there? And he went and talked to the people at the existing churches and discovered that they were so wrapped up in their church language that they didn't know how to talk to people who didn't know anything about what churches do. I would challenge you to look at the School Survival people and observe that the hardcore longtime members do not know how to talk to people who are outside of that world in the same way. And it's the same thing we were talking about earlier, Lisa, with our friends who are so white that they don't understand how to talk to people who aren't.
Right. So there are two issues there. One is the tech side of it, and what tools people are familiar with or can figure out, and the other side is the culture and the people, like when they join or connect, what are they seeing? What kind of interactions and conversations are there for them? So I think with I mean, overall, we will have have dedicated spaces, conversation spaces that are
Sure.
more catalyst oriented. I mean, dialogue and education is an example of, something that's, it's different from school survival. And I mean, we can do more of those with Catalyst. I mean, I think one thing with the tech thing is people vary a lot in what they are even open to. Like, I mean, there are a lot of people who hate Facebook, they can't stand the UI. Other people hate Google Plus. Other people won't get on Twitter. A lot of people on school survival, it's very hard to get them to interact on Twitter if there is any kind of stuff going on there. And then they're frustrated when they go there. They find IRC a lot easier. I don't know why exactly. Sometimes people can learn to just deal with a new technology if they're motivated to.
I think that we've definitely got to be cross-platform. We've got to be
that's
everywhere.
moral of the story.
Yeah,
And
you
then-
want to be
Yeah.
as cross-platform as you can possibly be, because you do not know what people's starting platform is going to be.
That's right.
Once you have them into the community, then you can say, well, we really like using this tool because, and then you can have tutorials and ways for them to learn. You can link to
That's
tutorials,
right.
how to
Exactly.
use such and such.
Yeah.
But I would not throw a brand new member into. I would not throw a brand new member into
A hangout.
a hangout or
Right.
into an IRC chat in the same way that I personally, as a fairly high church Episcopalian, if I were trying to invite a friend of mine to church who'd never been, I wouldn't have them come to the Easter Vigil. Because, incense and holy water and this and that and 7 readings and chant and no,
Right.
I wouldn't do that at all, and I wouldn't have them come to our wonderful little tiny Thursday evening healing service either, because there are 5 people and we all have known each other for years, and so I wouldn't do that. And in the same way, you can't throw somebody just into the middle of a thing where there is a defined culture and expect them to know what all the cultural implications are. I guess I'm more sensitive to that because of moving at being 17, 18 years old, going from where I lived all my life in East Tennessee to Minnesota to college, knowing that it was going to be a learning experience, but knowing also that there were going to be situations where I didn't know what to do because I wasn't from the upper Midwest.
Right.
Hi, Mo. Good to see you.
Mo, hi. So, which I think that we're going to find more and more that we are trying to cultivate a community that is diverse in many different ways, in ways that cross each other, diverse in terms of the tech that they like, diverse in terms of their socioeconomic background, the way that they like to learn, what relationship with their parents. But we're going to come into, we hope, many more issues of managing this community of kids who basically the only thing they have in common is they hate school, which is really broad. Which brings me to Twitter, and I wanted to talk about that a little bit because I've been obsessed with Twitter for like a couple of months now, and every so often I spend an hour tweeting all these kids who hate school. And that's been interesting. It's borne some fruit in terms of the conversations that I've had, flushed some people out. But I wanted to say that on Thursday we're going to have what I'm calling a I Hate School tweet fest. We're going to see if we can break the internet by having a lot of people tweet I hate school at the same time. We're going to try to trend. And maybe even a regular thing, and maybe even coming up with discussion about, okay, why do you hate school? What's going on? And it would be great to get people to do that, at least once it becomes popular, to get more and more people engaging, school survival people engaging with the kids, asking them questions about why do you hate school, what's going on at home, and so forth. So I'm psyched. I'm psyched about that because it's actually giving me a reason why I'm spending all this time on Twitter.
Yeah,
There are sometimes.
Hey, Elijah.
Hi.
So, which brings us to the issue of goals. Was the last thing on our outline today. One thing that we decided to do is to give ourselves a goal of having a quote-unquote school replacement program in place by the fall of 2015. It's been good for me to think in terms of having a group of students who are working with us at that time, and yet I think that we will always have sort of a nebulous group who are in various stages of being in school, leaving school, but it would be nice to have 3 or 4 kids who are working with us full-time in the fall of 2015. I think it would be nice. I'd really like that to see that happen.
And I think that's a very achievable goal. I think that you can find, you're going to have to. The key is to have developed a strong set of like 30 to 50 people that you're consistently interacting with who are sort of interested in that, because out of that you should be able to get 3 to 5.
Yeah, exactly.
And so then in order to get that group of 30 to 50 who are consistently engaging with you, that means you need to have about a few hundred who you are engaging with sometimes. So we're actually building up, we're doing a reverse marketing funnel. Oh, that's kind of cool. I never realized that. Which is what Rick, oh crap, that's what he did too. Oh my God. I read that 20 years ago and I had no idea. And so then that means that, at some level you're reaching somewhere over, you have on the periphery of that at any given time somewhere in the several hundred to a couple thousand people who are kind of circulating around. You're interacting with them on Twitter and they're not blocking you. They're and it occurs to me that perhaps with these people that you had positive conversations with, Lisa, one thing that you might think about doing is like a couple weeks or to a couple months later, get back in touch with them and just say, how's it going?
Right. Yes, I was thinking about that as I go through them. I want to come up with some kind of a mechanism of saving that person to a file somewhere, so I remember that person was promising, that person was helpful.
That is called the power of Twitter lists. That is called the power of the Twitter list.
Oh, is that
because you can have unlimited numbers of the damn things. That's one thing you can do with them. You just put you don't even have to follow the person to put them on a list. Of course, you can go back through your old tweets and find the interactions, and then as you do, you create this list, and then you just periodically you go visit them and send them. I mean, that is why the nice people at Twitter made lists, was because a whole bunch of companies begged them for some way to be in touch with, to do exactly what you guys are wanting to do.
Right. So
the new thing about Twitter, is that well, I know I've seen the tweets so much. I hate school. I hate this. I hate that.
Yeah.
I think I've redirect them to your site, School Survival, your site, and many others. So I think it's going.
I hear what you're saying. I think that they think that I'm selling something when I do that. I have done that, and if you say hate school, come to this site, or even if you do something a little less obvious than that, they think you're selling, that you're charging money, and it's not successful.
So that's one thing where I think
you need to do some other planning about that too.
Right. At the same time, we kind of do need to do more marketing to more people.
Right.
But that is one thing where with the Facebook ads, that was quite effective when they were targeted, and it isn't like liking a page isn't the same thing as necessarily saying these people are trying to sell something.
Right. Right. That's true, and I've done that.
To just show and provide memes and content, and then if they like those things, then that provides an opportunity to basically do marketing, and then encourage people to talk to us eventually. And there have been some that have kind of come out of those large numbers of people, and who have started interacting with us. And I think we could do more with that. And also, as we get more video and stuff like that, and collaborate with people who have audiences, I think we could do a lot more that isn't like a personal, like the Twitter stuff where it's like, you know, I'm going to like directly target you like in your personal conversation.
The things that are most beneficial for us to do and the things that will bear the most fruit are also happen to be the things that are really time consuming or take money. And that's it, it's just been really difficult for us to focus in on. I mean, the website, getting the website up was great. Getting podcasts, getting videos, it's all stuff that really requires a lot of concerted attention, and the need to make money is sort of makes itself felt. So, you know, and also those are the things that would make us be attractive for a crowdfunding campaign. So it's like we need to do the thing that we need to fund with a crowdfunding campaign before we do the crowdfunding campaign.
Right.
Which is kind of a
endless
cycle.
What I think you need to do is at this point, say the crowdfunding thing is going to do two things. It's going to get you money and it's going to get you awareness. But you have to have a minimum viable product in place before you can do it. So my suggestion would be, let's step back from the crowdfunding thing for a couple, not long, a couple of months is the maximum amount of time that I want you to step back from it. But I really want you to focus on, okay, what we developed just now a funnel. God help me. Never thought I would do marketing in my life, but I've done it actually all my life and just didn't realize it. Okay, so your goal is to have 3 to 5 active Catalyst members, let's say,
right,
in fall of 15, which means that we need to have in place 30 to 50, let's say, regular participants, by which I'm going to say they're doing hangouts and chat and stuff.
Like people who are basically interested in and talking
right,
to
who are
us
interested in it, but they're not quite ready to commit.
Or their parents won't let them,
right,
more likely.
Interested, but parents won't let, slash scared, slash etc. All right, to get that you need, and I'm just stepping back and I'm going to ask you a question. To get that you need somewhere in the range of 300 to 500 somewhat interested folks to get which you need to have a bunch of, you know, roughly 1,000 or more casually, I'm going to call them casually interested folks, to, you know, beyond which. So I'm going to take each step. How close are you to having the 30 to 50? How many people do you have regularly engaging with you in Hangouts, chat, etc., who are interested but their parents won't let them? How many people do we currently have in that category?
Probably 4.
All right.
We could expand that to 5 or 6 if we include a
Right,
couple
yeah,
of other
true,
people
yeah.
sort of in
Okay.
the
It's closer to 6.
Would I kind
Or
of
more.
include
Right.
it in there?
Yeah, you would fit into that group, and obviously Mo's there, and obviously Kyle, and yeah, there's and Kira and them, and so there's 5 or 6. Okay, so my point is, before you can even think about your end goal, we got to increase this by a factor of 5, right?
right.
Now, how many people do you have currently in the somewhat interested category?
That's a harder one to.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. I'm going to include in that people, and so that's maybe some research that you want to do, because I do not think that, because I think that's where you're stuck. I think you don't have any data, and I'm not a data as, I'm not a believer in meaningless data, but I am a believer in meaningful data. I do want to know how, are my Latin 2 students moving towards intermediate proficiency? Are my Latin 3 students solidly intermediate, bridging towards advanced? There are things, and it's very, the more imprecise you are with categories, the easier it is to collect those kinds of information. Well, yeah, they are. In the same way, what you guys want to know is that in order to get 3 to 5 active people by fall, you got to have 30 to 50 regular participants at least, of which you currently have 6. So how do we increase that number? We increase that number by increasing the number of somewhat interested people and then funneling them. There's a 2-step process, right? Because first you got to get the people into the somewhat interested category, and then you got to work them down in.
Right.
Your people who are in the regular participant category can, of course, help you, because they are regular participants. They are interested. Some of them would really like to be in that first group of 3 to 5, but they're scared or their parents won't let them. Well, one of the things that you can task them with is to say, look, in order for this to happen, I need for you to. That does 2 things. It increases their commitment. It makes them feel part of the organization. And then it also gives you better ambassadors. I guess that was 3 things. The last thing you want to do is to sound like you personally are selling something, as Dick has pointed out in the chat just now. But that's why it's really helpful to have people who are involved in it, not the peerless leader, not the sort of slick salesperson, but an actual person like me saying, I love this product, or I love this service, or the Rick Warren example, he didn't go out, well, in the beginning it was just him and his wife and their condo, and he was going out pounding the doors, but as soon as he got a group of core people, he stopped being the one who was going out and pounding the doors, because his point was that people figured he was paid to go out and pound the doors, and they were not wrong because he's a Baptist. Well, but if people who are not paid are going out and pounding the doors, or are going out and saying, come join our little group because it's really cool, that's a lot more attractive than to have, one of the people who are on staff saying, I love this.
Right.
It's the difference between the ad for the phone or the computer or whatever versus your friend saying, I really like my whichever kind of phone or my whichever kind of computer. I love it because here, come try it out and see the things that you can do that the other one can't. And
Right,
that's the kind of thing that you want. That's the kind of thing that you want. Now, so if you've got 5 or 6 regular people, that's really an excellent start. But that's going to give you between 0.5 and it's going to give you approximately 1 person, right, in the fall, which would be workable. Worst case, you can start with 1. It would be better if you had more than 1. But the good news is, that 5 or 6 probably is going to translate into at least half a person. That's not very helpful. We got to get the number up a little bit.
Yeah.
Is it the left half or the right half? If it's the bottom half, that's kind of
Right.
Well, we can. I mean, there is a category we can work with people who are in school, but who, like with Mode, somewhat others who are at least doing some amount of learning. Like a lot of them are interested in programming, and even if they're in school,
Speaking of that, I actually developed a new interest just now.
Oh.
What's that?
Actually, I was
Newsflash, everybody.
So what had happened is ever since I was kind of introduced to Deck Talk, singing synthesizers has kind of been a field of interest to me, and I actually just like 2 or so hours ago got a demo version of Deck Talk that can actually sing.
So how cool! So it actually sings.
Yeah, and it's an old synthesizer from the 80s. This is what it sounds like when it's singing.
About a maid, I'll sing a song, rickety tickety tick.
Oh my God! On a maid, I sing a song. She did not have her family long. Not only did she do them wrong, she did every one of them in. She did every one of them in. I haven't heard that song.
It's
In
a,
probably-
It's been a long
25
time since I
years.
heard that song too. But
it's
I
an
do
Irish
remember it.
legend. And actually, what it's really a more of what I'm trying to figure out right now is how exactly to get the code so that I'm able to produce actual notes. So what I'm using it right now is I'm learning from existing files. I have this whole pack of Deck Talk songs, so I'm basically opening them and viewing them so that I can learn how the coding structure works. I think you guys are dumbfounded or something.
But okay.
It is it's like for some just singing synthesizers has just been a field that I've been interested in, and well, who knows what's going to happen next.
I'd like to talk to you probably more after the hangout and over the next couple of weeks about what you're talking about the numbers and what that means in terms of what that means just in terms of what our day-to-day work it should be. You know,
Yeah, I think
I should be going back and developing some of the relationships that I've made, say on Twitter or with School Survival survey respondents, which there are a few of them that I've, it's a small handful of them that I've had some conversations with. Most of them I never hear from again, but some of them I have. So, making sure and cultivating and keeping in touch with kids so that keeping in mind the numbers only in the sense that this is feeding into the goal that we would like to have by the fall of 2015. And I like the idea of the outside circle moving to the inside circle. Is that what you were talking about with Rick Warren?
Yeah,
it's
moving
just
to the
marketing,
inside.
basically.
Moving to the inside.
It's like
It's
the
marketing,
funnel
but
concept.
it's also helping. It's
No,
also very
I'm not saying it's a
definitely
negative
helping.
thing. I'm saying it's like a
I was
basic
thinking about
marketing
Dick's what Dick said about marketing campaign rather than a place of attraction. It
Oh,
can be
right.
a marketing campaign at the same time that it's
yeah, they're not
it's actually
really into
helping
that.
people.
yeah. I think, and it's funny because when I was 20, I thought that marketing and advertising collectively and public relations were the most horrendous, awful, immoral, unethical thing in the universe.
Yeah.
I then become a teacher, a language teacher, a Latin teacher, right? I teach a thing that no one is required to learn. I teach an elective within an elective. And I spend the next 20 years building vast programs of people who wanted to buy what I had to sell by doing every classic form of marketing, not the Mad Men form of advertising, but every form of marketing that's ever been effective for the last for the previous 5,000 years of human history. Since there have been organized societies that had such things, which is basically building personal connections, showing people that this is important, making people be ambassadors, and sending them out to do. And so then once I discovered that I could do that independently of schools and school districts, it wasn't that big of a learning curve. Actually, it was weird because it wasn't about selling something that people didn't want or didn't need. It was about helping people discover a way to use a thing that they actually that they did want and they did need. And so that's the key, I think, here is that you always want to have, not in the horrible Don Draper way of closing, but you are not in the sort of traveling encyclopedia salesman of the 70s way, but you just want to build good relationships with people and invite them to a thing. And maybe they'll say yes, and maybe they'll say no, and maybe they'll say not yet. And then you get with your not yets periodically, and see if they're ready to move into being yeses. It's weird because
Right. So with the whole sort of funnel thing, or the larger audience versus people we're talking to more versus like active participants, I mean, if you think about the outermost thing of that, it's the group of people who are seeing something about what we're doing, period, and then who are engaging on the most basic level. So, I mean, a lot with the advertising in particular, and with School Survival as a site, like that's a pretty large number. Like probably, over 100,000 people have seen. Well, definitely, like a lot of people have at least seen something, or seen the link, or seen an ad, or clicked on the site or something once. But that's not meaning they're engaging beyond that. But then some number of people have like filled out the survey, or on the site, or liked the Voices of School Survival page, and so that's like a kind of first level beyond, just seeing it, to like begin to engage or say I want to hear more, and so like, and then there's actually talking to them beyond one time or something like that, which is a much smaller number, but
right.
But there's a question of how to increase that first or outermost number of people who at least see what we're doing, hopefully in a way that captures their interest, and then who get to the level of at least, saying, oh, this is interesting, and clicking on something or filling something out. And so we can talk to them or continue interacting with them. And basically the two most effective ways in terms of big numbers to do that is either advertising, or basically partnering with people like Boy in a Band, who can reach easily like 100,000 or more people with a video, and possibly a lot more than that.
Can't really do it alone, can we?
Right, exactly. I mean, there's a certain amount that can be done with, the site as it is, with interacting on Facebook and replying to comments in different places, with reaching out to people on Twitter like Lisa's doing. But like that's very time consuming, like to do all of that, and so it's hard to reach like 100,000 people that way. Whereas it's possible with advertising and with partnering with people with audiences to do that, to at least reach 100,000 people, and then maybe, with the right population, like several percent or 5% will then engage in some way, and then out of that number, more people will get into conversation. So, I guess one follow-up to that is with Boy in a Band, how to propose this sort of hangout series I have in mind that I think we could get interest from people who are interested, who are like trying to talk to him, and who have things to share, who are commenting on his threads and so on. But it's like he doesn't have time to keep up with all of that, and yet maybe we could help coordinate some kind of conversations among basically his audience who are interested in education, and then also get him involved somehow if he's interested.
Are you quite through?
Right.
The only thing that we had left down to talk about was the development of the organizational structure, but that's not something that we want or need to do right away. We just need to think about it, the process of incorporation, getting nonprofit status, decision making over board makeup, mission statement, even just getting a bank account so that we could, if somebody felt like donating money, we'd have a place to put it. Articles of incorporation. There's a whole big red tape thing that we haven't really very much even started researching yet. But but we need to at some point start that process. And
Right.
Justin, I remember all of your talking tos about going immediately into the nonprofit world.
Oh no, you need to decide what you want to do. I don't care
Yeah.
whether you're a nonprofit or not. I just want you to have made a wise decision and to have thought about the implications of your choice, because you can't convert it. It's very hard to convert a nonprofit into a for-profit. It's relatively easier to convert a for-profit into a nonprofit.
Right.
And it also, I want you to think about the time that it takes to get a 501c3 approved by the IRS, which you're going to have to do before you can open this putative bank account as a nonprofit corporation. Whereas if you start yourselves out as a something and then you apply for nonprofit status later, then
Right.
that's less hard. So
Actually, I think it is possible to just form a state nonprofit and set up a bank account there, and then the 501c3 can come after that.
yeah, you can. It depends on the state, and it depends. And I don't know what the feds do with stuff like that. That's a thing for you guys to find out, and to decide which state is the other thing, because you have several options.
Yeah, we were talking about that. We could do it in Maine. There's the possibility of doing it in a state like Delaware, which seems to have fewer regulations about nonprofits.
Right, but Maine doesn't seem to be too bad. It sounds like New
Right.
York and California are the really like most difficult ones to do this in.
And you happen to live in one of them?
Yeah.
Yeah, I wouldn't recommend New York as a for anything. The only issue with Delaware is that everybody wants to be a Delaware corporation. So that's the problem with Delaware, is that because of the fact that if you are a publicly traded corporation, you want to be incorporated in Delaware because they don't have a state corporate income tax, and there's some other reasons that for Delaware's popularity, but I think that's the main one.
But for our purposes, I think maybe if we is there an advantage to actually living in the state that you're incorporated in?
Depends on state. Some places will or will not allow you to be a foreign resident, as they call it, and set up a. I mean, Delaware doesn't care, but some states do. You
Right.
as a Maine resident probably are. It's going to be easier for you to create a Maine corporation. If, for example, you can be a North Carolina corporation fairly easily, they don't care, but they do want you to have a registered agent in the state if you don't live in the state.
Right, that's another thing with Delaware too. You have to pay some amount per year.
Yeah, you have to pay some amount per year to have a registered agent to do the stuff.
I see. Well, we might as well, incorporate in the most user-friendly way right now.
And that's also it's not impossible to change your state of incorporation. Again, it's going to be more expensive to do it. So that's another thing where you're going to want to make sure that you've thought these whole processes through.
There also is the possibility of finding a fiscal conduit. I mean, we have talked to Alan Burns, who is open to having us apply to his board for fiscal sponsorship. And we haven't really approached Student Voice on that, but there is also, they have 501c3 status, so, we haven't approached them either. But that is a low
yeah, that may be what you want to do
way of
starting out
doing
in any case.
Right.
There's also basically all the Liberated Learners affiliates are possibilities for that. And
Right.
I mean, I think it is worth thinking about how part of what we could use money for is stuff like promotion that isn't really just about what we're doing, but it applies to like all of these alternatives. And I've thought quite a bit about how to basically collaborate with others who are doing things like Liberated Learners or Sudbury and do some kind of promotional campaign, that just basically lets people know that there are options. They're not all worse than school or the same as schools. They look way different. Here's what they look like, and that's something that I've never seen done on any kind of focused level.
And that goes to the bridging the gap goal as well. I mean that
Exactly.
is part of our vision, I suppose.
Right, exactly.
It's not avoid the
And so-
issue of the most difficult students, the most difficult people to reach and to help. Don't avoid that issue. Grapple with that issue head on. I think that's part of the vision.
Right.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's the whole outline that we set out for tonight. Really great feedback and discussions. We're going to do this, I guess, every few weeks. Or maybe if we can get commitments again for people to come and listen, we may have one sooner, who knows. But that's the show.
Great. Well, thank you. This has been really helpful for me to know where you guys are.
Yeah.
And it really sounds like you have been making.
Mind if I ask a bit of a question?
A bit of a question?
Or rather, an entire
A
question.
whole question, yeah.
Well, yeah, thanks for the joke. What exactly is this whole 501c3 thing?
That
Oh,
that
you really
is.
probably don't want to know.
Why don't you take that one, Justin?
In 30 seconds, a 501c3 is a nonprofit corporation. It does not pay taxes on. It is a tax-exempt corporation. It is like the United Way is one. The Red Cross is one.
Aren't they those weirdos that are trying to tell us to stay in schools?
No. Now
Or am I thinking of something else?
some of those things are organized as 501c3s, yes, but that it's a tax structure. Anything can be any organization that has a civic or charitable purpose and decides that that purpose, rather than returning profit to shareholders, is its primary reason for existence, can apply to the IRS to be classified as a nonprofit, which means that rather than distributing it doesn't mean that it doesn't have positive cash flow. It means that its positive cash flow, rather than being distributed to shareholders in the form of a dividend, gets reinvested in whatever its social purpose is. So, for example, and it also means that it can accept donations and that you can deduct the donations that you made to it on your taxes.
And
Short
actually,
answer.
does the 501c3 refer to what section of the tax code?
Yeah, it refers to the section of the tax code that authorizes them. There are 501c3s, there are 501c4s, which are political and are not tax exempt. There are all kinds. If you want to read the tax code, Mo, you go right ahead.
I'm assuming C stands for
normally-
clause.
No, it does not stand for clause. It is section 501, subsection C, paragraph 3 of the Internal Revenue Code.
Subsection
And
5.
there's a parenthesis around both the C and the 3. But different parentheses because they're different sections. Too many lawyers in my family. I know this. I grew up knowing this crap.
Oh God.
You don't even want to know. But I mean, it's stuff that you do need to know. If you are starting a thing that has a primarily social mission, whose primary purpose is not to make its initial investors wealthy, then there are some tax advantages to being a nonprofit corporation / 501c3. There are corresponding disadvantages to that, like everything. There are trade-offs, and the question is, for your particular mission, are the trade-offs worth it? If you are the Ford Foundation, if you are the Gates Foundation, if you are the United Way, if you are the American Red Cross, then the trade-offs are very much worth it because you've either got a big funder or you've got like a bunch of consistent donors who are happy to have tax deductions for their gifts to you, and you can afford to pay somebody or like probably a department worth of people to do fundraising for you, because that's the disadvantage of being a 501c3 is you have to raise money. and you have to then have donors, and then you have to maintain relationships with donors.
Wow.
Versus if you're just a company, then you go out and sell your stuff, but then you got to pay taxes on your profits unless your accountant is creative enough such that you don't have any profits. Like General Electric, for example, they have billions of dollars of operating revenue, but they don't pay any taxes because they have good accountants.
Right. Although they do, I mean,
Well,
these
I mean, they pay
organizations
taxes. But
do pay payroll tax. That's
Yeah,
I think even nonprofits have to do that,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
If they're paying us salaries.
Yeah, if they're paying salaries to an employee, you got to pay Social Security, payroll tax, you got to pay all that stuff. But do you have to pay corporate income tax? Even if your accountant isn't creative enough to hide all of your net operating revenue in such a way so that it doesn't show up as profit. If and do you want really the reason to be a nonprofit, to be a 501c3 is because you want to accept donations from people and you want them to be able to take a tax deduction for their donations.
Right. That's really the number one benefit, given that with a regular corporation you can just basically reinvest the money or
Right.
Whatever.
I mean, you can do, as a corporation, you can pretty much do that. You can reinvest the money anywhere. You just have to, your board and or shareholders have to agree on how you're doing it. If you're not a publicly traded corporation and you're closely held, then they're most likely going to agree, and it's not an issue. But it really is a question of what you want to do, and I know that there's not a single right answer. There's whatever works best for you. I personally, because of the fact that my grandmother spent her career managing and as an executive director of a couple of foundations, the less that I have to do with 501c3s, the better. I know what they have to do. I know what kinds of things they have to do in order to get the money, and I know what the reporting requirements are on the money. And the less to do with that there is, the better. I want a one-page, very simple, form, and I want a good accountant, and that's what I want. But but to me, I am not you, and you may very well decide that what you want is to do that because it may be worthwhile to you to have donors. It probably is. It's just with the particular group of people that I'm working with. Also, outside charity is not a thing that they need because they've had generations of it, and it has not really worked so well for them.
Whoa.
Right. I mean, one thing I've thought about is the prospect of either collaborating with other existing nonprofits or, it could be a new one or something, but that does focus on fundraising and basically promoting like media production, promoting that there are alternatives, and Catalyst would be one of them among many, and then try to fundraise around that goal of bridging the gap, increasing awareness, and then try to do our thing. I mean, it could be just a regular like corporation or LLC, and then raise whatever money we need by finding clients that would be made possible by increased awareness. If that makes sense.
Yes, I think so.
Yeah. Well, I think we should wrap it up, right?
Yeah.
Any concluding notes?
Yes. Just want to thank you guys for inviting me and for listening to me ramble and rave and make you think through this.
Are you
thing.
insane?
Oh, you missed most of the rambling and raving.
Oh, yeah, because I was so preoccupied with deck talk.
Yeah, that's probably yes.
Yeah.
I think that someone is working on someone is working in the Internal Revenue Service here.
Oh.
No, I don't want to work for them.
Justin.
I do not ever want to work for them. I want to work as possible with them. I send them a form every year and some money.
This one.
Well, you see, when you find yourself in the world of being self-employed and owning a business in the United States, there's just stuff that you've got to know. And when you have people in the family who did this professionally, there's other stuff that you just know because you know it. Right. And I mean, it's a it's the United States tax code is
extraordinarily long, complicated.
Is a thing of horror in a lot of ways. I mean, it is what it is.
And apparently, children are called, quote, dependents.
Yes,
unquote.
they are. They are.
That makes me a bit angry, actually.
Oh well, I mean, but without
you
your
can
parents,
become independent, and then you won't be a dependent.
You can petition to become independent. You can petition the court to be emancipated, and then you can go file your own tax form, and you can claim it yourself.
I think the whole thing is you have to prove that you can support yourself financially.
Yeah, pretty much. If you are disabled, for example, you can be somebody's dependent when you're over 21. If you are a full-time student, you can be claimed as somebody's dependent for a while. If you are a stay-at-home spouse with no income, you can be a dependent.
I'm going to step off because I have to return the computer that I'm on.
Yeah, and I'm going to step off
been a
because
pleasure.
I'm really tired, but it has been...
We'll see you guys next
It was
time.
a great discussion.
Bye.
You guys-
I'm really wanting to hack